The following is brought to you by the PLD Projects Network. It's me. It's PLD.
I love numbers, PLD. We're back. We're back. Wow, it's been a little bit, hasn't it?
We just looked. It's been over a month since we had an episode.
Okay, by 3 days. Stop. Don't Don't make it sound worse than it is.
So I should round down. You're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're gonna say
it was lie to the people.
Yeah, it's much more convenient for us, and it makes me feel less terrible about the fact that we have not been here for so long. But if anyone knows you and I, we work on a movie trivia thing, something or another. Right?
Yeah, and there's been a lot going on with the movie trivia showdown as far as we had a big taping.
What's that?
Then we had the movie trivia show that we work on, the movie trivia showdown.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay, great. I always wanted to know what the name was.
We let you out of our cage every once in a while to do stuff. Then they put us back in. We had a taping. We have another taping coming up, and somewhere in between that, we had to revitalize the Star Wars division for their Patreon. So it's just been a little hectic for us at this point, unfortunately. What makes it worse to me is the fact that we got all the way through the Conjuring universe except for the final film, and then we had to put that one off for a month.
Well, to be fair, also, we got on call last week, and I'll own it. We had gotten on call, we were ready to record, and I turned my camera on, and PLD looked at me and he was like, "You're not okay." I was so sick, and he was like, "We're not doing this." So that he told me to go to bed. I've never had a friend look at me and go, "Just go sleep." Just go do literally anything else and actually get better because you look like you're dying.
You really did. I was actually fearful for you at that point. I'm like, yeah, this is not, if we tried to do this, we would get 5 minutes in and it was not going to be good.
Yeah. So here we are.
Yeah. I mean, you looked some worse than some of the victims in the Conjuring franchise. I'm not going to lie. That's how bad it was.
I want to say that I almost feel like I looked like Doctor Strange in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness when he decides to necromance into his body and do the dream walking.
Yeah, that's
Multiverse Strange.
That is a good piece. Was that bad? It might not have been that bad. It might have been 3 weeks after Pizza Papa bad. After 3 weeks of punching yourself in the face, maybe that was.
All hail our Lord, the Pizza Papa, who always
gets paid.
I just want to say this up top. We're not going to talk about it a lot.
No.
Y'all, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness rules.
It is.
Holy
good.
Shit.
It is good. I don't care.
No. You're underselling good. This thing is fucking great.
It is my top 5.
It's my number 1 MCU movie. And that's not recency bias. That's just Sam Raimi came in, wreck shop, and gave me a movie I didn't know I needed.
Giving everything you needed and more. It's true.
Yeah.
It is true. It's definitely top 5 for me. I'm not going to say. I do want to watch it again. I will see if it is recency bias. I'm not sold, but I don't think it is. I know you have. I'm saying for me, I want to check it again, make sure it's in the top 5 places. Not recency
I was like,
bias.
why would you seen it again be my recency bias? That
my
seems
recency bias. So
okay.
I want to give it another shot. I want to say it is, but I can't see it. The only thing I have against it, I had a couple things against it. One was the fact that it didn't quite have the emotional weight of some of the other the portals moments, things like that. But still, and I had a lot of little individual pieces problems with it. But overall, like I said, the sum of the parts was much greater than the individual pieces. So that's what's important to me, the overall feel of the movie. So
also, it had Bruce Campbell finally in the MCU. Let's be real here.
It did. And
that's for me,
no matter what Ben Bateman says, when you put Bruce Campbell in a movie, it does actually automatically make it good.
Did he? Okay, I gotta say,
you missed that part.
No, I was there.
Oh.
I heard this. I watch Action Guys every week, not just because I support you because you're my friend,
right?
But I genuinely like Guy, and I put up with Ben at this point.
That's fair.
Because Ben's just saying some absurd shit on there, but this guy, he starts saying that Bruce Campbell's not a real actor because he wants to play his game with you on the show, and he was like, Bruce isn't a real actor, choose real actors. Sir, Bruce Campbell might be the most real actor of all time. Let me introduce you to the one-hit wonder that is The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. from, back in the 90s, one of the greatest TV shows of all time. He is the star of one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time in the Evil Dead franchise.
That is true. You're not wrong.
We don't badmouth Bruce Campbell in these parts, Ben Bacon.
And
we don't do that.
I said that. I agreed with you. But
I'm just telling you.
Well, I did.
Well, yeah, but then you did, but then he insulted the Rocketeer on top of it.
I know, that was even worse. I was like, oh God.
Dude was like on a warpath last night for my fucking heart.
He was. He just forgets that we have to write his next match.
No, I love you, Ben. You know I love you. I know you're listening, Ben. I don't actually just put up with you. You're my friend, and I love you. Just go watch The Rocketeer. You would have known Terry O'Quinn at that point.
A fair 3-point question, Ben. It was a very, very fair 3-point question.
Actually, I'll say this. PLD and I were talking about this afterwards, and the funny thing to me is that the problem was that you asked, like, in Action Guys, he was like, PJ, put a 3-pointer for The Rocketeer, like a fair 3-pointer. But the problem was that in the way he said it, we already knew it was The Rocketeer. In any other way, right, it actually would have been in an inverted question to be the fair 3-pointer. I think it would have been, like, in the comic book movies subgenre, it would have been, in what 90s comic book film does Terry O'Quinn appear as Howard Hughes? That would have been the way I worded it versus asking for it. But because he already knew it was Rocketeer, because he was asking specifically for it, because as much as I don't see Dalton as a 3-point question, he's on the poster.
No, I don't. He's a 2-pointer.
But it's also a 30-year-old movie at this point.
So maybe it is. We did. It's funny. You're getting insight into the heads of the question writers here. We both do that every once in a while. Kind of like, it's an easy question. But that's a 30, 40-year-old movie now. Like, is it as easy as we think? I don't know.
And that's the truth. Like, the funny thing is you and I have these conversations, because I was sitting there and I was listening to Ben, and he's like, "You fucking assholes, you animals! Like, what? That's not a 3-point question." And so I started to think about it, and I was like, "Fuck, maybe Dalton really is a 3-pointer now." Like, it's tough.
It is. It's very tough. I don't really know. I mean, especially when it comes to, like, our favorite movies like that. Like, I had the same problem when I read Ned Harris question. I'm like, okay, that's an easy point. That's like a 1-pointer. And somebody like, that's actually a 5. Oh, okay, all right. So,
yeah, man,
we keep each other in check, though.
Yeah. So, Ben, I would never blow you out on a Terry O'Quinn question like that. I'll be honest. Like, that's not the style of the game these days.
He's like, wait, what? The guy from Lost?
Yeah. Hey, look. I mean, if you want, he could be the guy from The Stepfather.
That's what I mentioned.
Or the guy from Tombstone. Because remember, he's in Tombstone.
That is true. That's very
He's great in Tombstone. Also featuring Val Kilmer, Kurt Russell, Michael Biehn. I mean, that movie's got a fucking cast, dude.
That movie fucks.
Dude, that movie fucks. You know what? I have a poster for it down in my living room, and a part of that is because I also live, like, not that far from the real Tombstone. And I like going up there because they've got a great brewery, actually.
I'm sure they do. That's a peak brewery area, I'm sure. Oh my God.
Oh, dude, there's some good food up there. Like, I went up there with Tim Franco and Rachel Silvestrini a couple of months ago, and we took my mom, and we all went up there and we ate at Big Nose Kate's.
Okay.
And it's that very famous saloon in the movie and in, like, real life. Dude, the food was so good. Holy shit. Like, I'm going to tell you, like, their menu's great. Their alcohol's great, but the food is just, like,
that good.
So good. You need to come out and visit so we can go.
I know. We've been talking about that for years. It feels like years.
I know.
We will.
Well, it feels like longer than that because of COVID. That's true. You would have been here had COVID not happened.
Damn right. Absolutely. We will we'll make it done. We'll get there. We'll do it. And we'll try to find time. We'll actually record one of these in person together. And it'll be...
The world's not ready for that.
Yeah, I don't think it can handle it, really.
Here's the truth matter. We're, 15 minutes into this, and we haven't even really brought up that we're actually talking about the Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It tonight. This is the quality content that you guys pay for.
You know what I'll say? It's funny. You mentioned that. I don't know if you watched Scoundrels the other day. I was on, and Jarvie was talking about that. I think it was on air. I don't know if it was on air or off air. Jarvie's like, yeah, I was like, download your guys' podcast. I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time. I was like, thanks, man. I was like, but it's kind of funny. Sometimes I'm listening to it at the gym or I'm listening to something, and like about 15 minutes in, I have to go, wait, what movie are we talking about? What are we talking about again? And he has to go back and look and go, oh, okay.
Look, we always get to it. The thing is that a lot of the time too, like, okay, I'm gonna like reveal some behind the scenes stuff about this. This episode's gonna be way longer because now we're just hanging out and talking. But the funny thing is like behind the scenes, the thing you guys don't know is that every Sunday, Monday we meet up and we're working and we're doing podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. But by the time we get on call on Monday, which is usually when we record this, we have watched the movie, and then we just start nerding out about random stuff. And that's kind of what we do. And I love it because I think it gives you guys an insight into us, which also reminds me, I have one more thing I have to bring up tonight.
Okay.
And this is actually important because it is podcast adjacent for us.
It is. I knew exactly what you were talking about as soon as you started bringing it up, and I'm ready for it.
Fucking news happened this week, my friend.
We are not on Two Mediocre White Idiots in a Box, but we might as well be.
Blue box. Blue box. God damn it. But you're not wrong.
Go ahead. We did have some great Doctor Who news that made us both quite giddy. If you don't know, we are both huge Doctor Who fans. You should. If you listen to us, you should definitely know we have a podcast adjacent for the Patreon users about Doctor Who episodes. We love Doctor Who. We both have been disenfranchised a little bit with this run of Doctor Who. Nothing wrong with Jodie Whittaker. We're just not a fan of Chris Chibnall's writing and his direction and storytelling, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But we are both very excited about what's coming up next. It's coming close to the 60th anniversary, the return of Russell T Davies, and he made some announcements this week and promised for more.
Yeah, and he started this actually last week, and we probably would have brought it up had we not gone off for a week. But not only did we find out that we now have allegedly the 14th Doctor, I have my own thoughts and theories about whether or not.
Which I agree.
The Cuddy Gatwa, I hope I said it right, is our first person of color to be able to be the Doctor.
The main Doctor in the role, yep.
Yeah, which is friggin' awesome. Yes. Not to take away from the Fugitive Doctor of the Chris Chibnall era. Decision, not the actress, but the decision of the Fugitive Doctor is not my favorite. But this
not sure that's real, actually. I'm still not sure that's real, to be honest. So I'm still holding out on that being maybe potentially false. But either way, yes, this is a big thing. Yeah,
we finally got the casting of the new Doctor who was taking over for Jodie. It's big news, right? Really big news. You and I were texting about it. This was exciting.
Yes, exactly. And then...
But this is where it got crazy. So yesterday, I'm like standing in front of the theater. I'm about to go in to see Lawrence of Arabia with Tim Franco and Chance. And I open my phone to the news that David Tennant and Catherine Tate are also returning to Doctor Who. And the reason now we know that this got out there was because they were filming outside today. And we're seeing all these pictures of them. But this is huge. Tennant came back for the 50th anniversary, so it's been 10 years basically since he's been on camera as the Doctor. With Catherine Tate, who hasn't been back since the end of time.
Dr. Donna. Yeah,
it's Dr. Donna. But more importantly, I think he's the 14th Doctor.
I think so, too. I think we're going to go from Whittaker to Tennant somehow, potentially speaking. And maybe he'll still be a short-term Doctor. It'll be very interesting to have a new Doctor, like the new Doctor, get introduced like halfway through the new season, which would be very interesting. Or maybe not even to the end. Yeah. Wouldn't that be interesting if he comes up and the ending is that? There's a lot of different theories out there. Of course, I will throw out the other theory I talked about just before we went on air, is that maybe this is the Meta-Crisis Doctor that somehow come back at this point. But again, there's a lot of different ways we could go. We do know from some of the set pictures this is taking place afterwards.
It has to be. There's no way that it's not.
It's a different costume. It's a different. We saw a certain character. I don't know if I want to spoil it, but a certain character that was not been announced to come back. Although you can kind of guess if you know that era. But the character is definitely in a place where they are advanced in age. That's even a little more advanced, I guess.
Someone that I anticipated we might see because this character has come back in the audio dramas that Big Finish does with Tennant in the past. and
Makes
Catherine
sense.
Tate. But this is big, man, and this is for the 60th. And if these are like the big announcements, and Davies is saying he has more,
which he did. He did say he got to stop making announcements. He has more he wants to save. And I don't know, like, it seems weird that, like, he's dropping so many in a row because, like, it's still a little while away before the 60th happens. So, you know what I mean? I guess he's got to get it a little bit out of the way because they are taping things already. So they have to get a little bit out of the way. But interesting enough, let's drop the other news real quick with her because it's also part of that. We have a character, Yasmin Finney's joining as a character named Rose.
And she is apparently the new companion.
What?
Questions. I have so many questions. There's just so much happening in the world of Doctor Who, and you know what's funny to me, right? Like, I'm guaranteeing all of our listeners who are like not into Doctor Who, or they're like, "What are you guys talking about? Like, why
save this for your other podcast?"
Probably, but you have to understand, you guys. I never thought that Tennant would come back in any like capacity outside of like a special. This is way different.
Yes.
Because this is not just a special. Like, whatever's happening is much different. And I can already feel it. I think next year is going to be I think the 60th is going to feel really special all year. I'm wondering, and I've been floating this behind the scenes with you as we talk. I wonder if we're going to get an announcement later that, like, Eccleston's also back. McGann is back. We've seen some of the other doctors. Yeah. Matt Smith. And what if they all get to do like small episodes that all lead to a crossover event?
Like, it'd be like almost, it'd be like Crisis on Infinite Earths, but done
with a doctor.
With a doctor. And like in a universe that's actually 60 years old, which is even more phenomenal because anything could happen.
Doctor Who has been on for almost 60 years, brother.
That's a lot.
You and I have been watching it live for at least unfortunately, almost 20.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it a bunch even before that when I was younger. That's when I first
I didn't watch it live when I was younger, though. Like, I was watching it on, like, PBS and stuff like that when they would do some, like, the Tom Baker era. But this is, like, dude, are you kidding me?
Dude. And I have not been as excited about Doctor Who since Capaldi left, really. That's...
that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, I'm thrilled to be excited. And here's the thing. I was at the Comic-Con panel for Jodie her first day when she came out, and I have pictures of it. I was really pulling for her.
Yeah.
I loved the trailers.
I love her.
The writing did not do her good.
No, the story was not great. And Chris Chibnall, I'm trying to be nice. I don't want to ever scorch her.
No, say it, dude. Honestly, Chibnall, you were not made for fucking sci-fi.
No, not made for Doctor Who, especially. You're not a fan. He's like, not a fan. And you don't need to necessarily be a fan, but you need to care. And like some of the comments he made when he was leaving, he did not care about the canon. He was like, who cares about this canon and this anyway? Like, it's all going to get changed anyway. Who cares? And it's like, you can't go in with that kind of mindset and this kind of show. Like, with this kind of people who really are that dedicated to the show, it shows that you don't care. It did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I hate going scorched earth on people, but that made me very mad. And so when I hear that Russell T Davies is coming back, someone who basically invigorated the franchise, brought it back from a hiatus, and he's also fucking excited about it. He's excited about it again.
Honestly, dude, the Davies that left at the end of so for everyone listening, Jesus, we're gonna get to the Conjuring eventually, I promise. The reason that the Davies stuff is so important to me is that Davies was the guy who actually relaunched the show in 2005. He was the showrunner of that era, and he had Eccleston and Tennant. He was on the show for 4 years and 4 seasons and some change, because there was a year where they only did 4 specials. And that was the last year of David Tennant and his run. One
of which is our next thing we're covering on
correct.
Mediocre. It's what the golden box.
Correct. So in that, him coming back 2 showrunners later, if you will, because there was Stephen Moffat and then Chibnall, for him to come back, Davies now is a much different Davies from the 2008, 2009 era. But he's still the Davies who loves Doctor Who.
Right.
And that is so clear, and it has been since he left because he stayed a fan. He was still always posting about it. During COVID, one of the things that he did, and this is how big of a fan he is, because he actually, Sarah Jane Adventures lasted, I think, 2 seasons after his departure of Doctor Who. He was still overrunning that. And the show had to end because, unfortunately, there was the untimely passing of the actress Elizabeth Sladen, who played Sarah Jane Smith.
Right.
The show never had an ending. So in the middle of COVID, he actually wrote an epilogue finale and had all the actors come back and record this finale to say goodbye to the character. And it became so clear in doing it. I'm getting chills talking about it, but it became very clear in doing it that how much he still cared.
Yes.
And like the last line of it really like hit home this idea that they thought that before Sarah died, the Doctor had arrived at her house and like taken her away on one last adventure. And so I'm tearing up talking about it. In doing that, it reminded me how much he cared about the lore and he cared about the characters, but it also meant that he never moved on. And I think that him coming back for the 60th, it's a big deal. Doctor Who needs it. It needs the shot in the arm to like get better because, and I liked Moffat, but even Moffat towards the end after Matt, like it really trailed off. A lot of people don't love the Peter Capaldi years, and that's unfortunate, but I understand it.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for him. I love him.
I am too. And I know that obviously, as we talked about, the Chibnall era has not been well received. And so Davies feels like the right choice. To bring Tennant back right now feels like the right choice. You needed the shot in the arm to make people who fell off the show come back.
Right.
And also get a general audience to like tune in. So what I'll say to this so we can move on, and PLD, you can add any final thoughts after I finish, is that if you've never watched Doctor Who, now is a perfect time to like dip your toes into the water. HBO Max has all the seasons currently. I don't necessarily recommend always starting with season 1 just because I think that some of season 1 is rough for some people to watch and get into.
Do you mean season 1 as in Eccleston? Like
yeah,
new Who?
Yeah, because they only have new Who.
Right.
So the reason I'm talking about it is in this.
Just want to make that sure because you say season 1, they might think you're going back to all the way to Doctor Who the first season,
right?
Which would be great to do too. Honestly, there's a lot of good stuff back there, but it is obviously of its time and very dated, and it's actually not all. Trek. Yeah, exactly. Not all of it's actually even available because of BBC.
Right.
So,
what I would say though is if you've never seen Doctor Who and you want to give it a chance, a really cool place and a really great starting point if you don't want to start at season 1, because season 1's a little rough, I'll be honest, and it's fun, but it's finding its footing. Season 5 was a fresh start when Moffat took over, and it's the Matt Smith's The 11th Hour. That whole season's really great. It's really interesting. Everything ties together really nicely, and it's a really good entry point. And if you dig that, then go back. Stop at the end of season 5. Go back, watch season 1 through 4, and then like jump ahead to season 6. I think that there's a lot to do there, and there's a lot to take in. Or, like I said, just start from season 1 and watch through. Eccleston's
I'll be honest.
Great.
I will say I watched it. Like, I was a Doctor Who fan when I was younger, like a lot younger, but it took me a while to really get back into the New Who. Actually, the funny thing is you mentioned New, I actually didn't watch live until the 50th. I started watching live.
I forgot that you were the 50th. You and I talked about this.
Right before the 50th, I went and, all right, I'm going to finally binge it because I loved Doctor Who when I was younger and I dropped off for whatever reason. People are talking about it's the 50th anniversary. Let's go back and start watching the New Who. And the first, I was kind of watching during season 1. I remember going, it's kind of cheesy, but I love it. But it does get there. And by the end of the season, I was in. The finale's great. Well, the finale's great, but when they regenerated, I was kind of like, I found myself going, I don't want this David Tennant guy. I love Eccleston. I loved him at that point. By the time it was over, and then I watched Tennant, and Tennant became my favorite Doctor. But yeah, it goes to.
All right, I got a question for you. A 5-point question.
Oh Jesus!
In Doctor Who.
Oh God. PJ definitely was a trivia about Doctor Who better than I do. I'll tell you that much.
In the finale of season 1, after David Tennant has regenerated, looks at Rose. He looks at Rose and says, "Oh, that's right. What?"
That's right.
because they were going to go
Barcelona.
somewhere.
Barcelona.
Correct, for 5 points. Hell yeah, brother. You get me. All right. So that was our Doctor Who pitch for the night.
All right, so we're 25 minutes in. And what were we talking about? Oh, The Conjuring. Conjuring Devil.
The devil made me do it. The devil made me talk about Doctor Who tonight.
I really have to say, one last thing I'm going to say, not about Doctor Who at all, it's going to be, I have to start putting in the description. I think I'm going to have to put in the description. 25 minutes in is when the actual movie talk of it starts. You came to see The Conjuring. If you really want to watch The Conjuring, you can skip ahead to 25 minutes if you want to. Just as a favor to people.
I mean, you could.
But you'd miss
or
all
they could
that.
just listen to us.
Yeah,
Look, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are like, guys, 25 minutes in, but the truth is I just like talking with you and hanging out.
I
and
know.
There's
It's
a lot
fun.
to catch up on, and it's fun.
It's fun.
But all right, we got to talk about it finally.
Let's get in there. Let's do it.
Let's talk about The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It. The
finale.
2021. Really? You want to talk instead? All right. Look, we're talking about the third official entry in the Conjuring franchise. The Conjuring, I should say, not like the franchise as a whole, because it's a universe at this point. Yeah. But this is the third film, came out in 2021, of course, mid-pandemic. But this is the third entry, directed by Michael Chavez, David Leslie Johnson, the Gridlock, coming in to write this entry from a story by James Wan. We are now jumping ahead to the 1980s with the Warrens.
Yes, indeed. And we bring the Warrens back, which is always the best thing about these particular movies for me, because you got Vera Farmiga, you got Patrick Wilson, and their chemistry is just rock solid, and that's the best part about the Conjuring universe and as a whole. I like some of the spin-offs. We've talked about them. Some of them I like even better than others. But when these two are on screen together, it's magic to me.
Well, and not just that, like dovetailing off of Annabelle Comes Home to come back to this one was such a great kind of way to reintroduce the characters in a way, as weird as that sounds, just because we'd kind of been separated from them. There was a lot happening in the world of the spinoffs and things. And the bummer for me, though, I'm just going to get it out of the way up top, is that I really wish James Wan had come back to direct. Of course, he didn't want to, because he busy. He went off, he did Aquaman. Aquaman made $1 billion. And then he followed it up doing Malignant, which if you've not seen Malignant, please check out Malignant. That's one of those flexes. That's Sam Raimi doing Spider-Man 3 and then saying, hi, I'd also like money to go do Drag Me to Hell. Like one of those baller moves where a studio goes, I mean, we're going to give you the money, but what?
What? Huh? Okay.
So he doesn't come back for this one, but he comes up with the story, and he brings on Michael Chavez, who directed The Curse of La Llorona, which we have talked about, which is a Conjuring Universe film.
Yep.
Don't listen to people who say it's not.
Yep.
To come back in and direct this entry.
And I'm not going to say up top. I'm not a fan of Michael Chavez so far. I mean, he did The Curse of La Llorona, and it was fine, but it was definitely one of the lesser films for me. He's just not. He's not an exciting director. He feels like he's still feeling his way. Whereas, especially compared to a guy like James Wan, who just has a perfect style for this kind of film. He gets it right away. I'm kind of like, as soon as I saw that move, I'm kind of like, oh.
I'll say this: you're not wrong. However, I'll say of the two movies I've seen from him that he's done, this is the superior of the two, easily, but it's not necessarily because his direction's better in this than it is in La Llorona by quite a bit.
100%.
But it's also because he has Vera and he has Patrick. Like
so they lean on them, yes, and that's what really hits it home.
Right. And again, like the previous Conjuring universe films, or Conjuring films rather, not the universe themselves, this is based on a true story, if you will, of a case, quote unquote, of a case that the Warrens had taken on, based off a book called The Devil in Connecticut. Right. And it was involving a man named Arnie who murders someone and then goes to trial and claims that the devil made him do it and he was possessed.
Thus the title of the film, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Correct. The one thing that was a bummer about the movie, and I want to get this out of the way real quick too before we talk about it, is that when the movie was originally going into development, they talked a lot about the fact that the idea was that it was supposed to be more of a like courtroom drama.
Right.
That is not actually what the movie is. It becomes much more CSI The Warrens, and I was not big into that.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how it would have been if I wasn't like not promise. I shouldn't say that. If it hadn't been implied so heavily that we're going to get a courtroom drama out of The Conjuring, which kind of definitely inspired me. I was good to see Ed and Vera Farmiga's. God, blank kind of character. Lorraine. Thank you, Jesus Christ. I'm old. I'm old, guys. Ed and Lorraine, like in a trial setting and everything else. I was like, oh, that's going to be kind of interesting to see. Instead, I wonder if I had known it was going to be CSI, I would have been better off. You know what I mean? Like instead of like, then I didn't have
it's helped in hindsight. I'll admit.
Yes, definitely. Although, and the other thing about in hindsight, you think about it, sometimes you don't know what you want. And as much as the idea of the trial does sound kind of cool to me, it'd be hard for them to have the scares coming across in a trial setting in a way that would, because like they can't show anything in the court because otherwise it'd be proven without a shadow of a doubt.
Maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe it needed, like, you could have still done stuff, and it could have been things that were happening, obviously, outside of it, but maybe it would have been better to try something a little different.
Yeah. I was wondering if a real true, this almost feels like if they want to do it with a trial and make it about the trial, you could have made it a series. Like a streaming series, like a 10-episode series, they got to go into like the actual piece of the trial. You have them searching out afterwards, and they go for trial. It seems like it could be expanded out to be better in that fashion. But
yeah, totally. Look, we don't get that, and that's okay because look, the movie's not bad. It's not a bad movie. I don't want anyone to think that it's a bad movie. Like that's not what we're saying. Movie is made for a lot more than the others. $39 million budget, but it ends up making $202 million at the box office in the COVID era.
In the pandemic, while it also had a HBO Max release at the same time.
Correct. So this is a pretty big move because it really puts it within really striking distance of the first two movies.
Right.
In their overall box office.
Right.
And it comes out in the middle of June when we're really not supposed to be at the movies. They're still doing distancing. They're not even selling out like sold out screenings, if you will, and things like that. So the movie makes the money it's supposed to make, and that's pretty impressive. And I got to give them credit. Like, I didn't know when it was coming out. I thought for sure it might kill the franchise. And actually, when we get to the end of this, we're going to talk about the future of the franchise. It's nice to know that this franchise is not on ice. Because I really did fear that the worst, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
In this.
Although we have to have a discussion about the future. There's something I would definitely look forward to at the end of the episode. There's stuff I want to talk about. I don't know if we'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. It's all good. But we pick up. It's 1981, and we start in an exorcism, if you will. Right. Not if you will. It's an exorcism.
It is exorcism.
David Glatzel, he's a small 8-year-old. He's been allegedly possessed. And this kid, if he looks familiar to you, I'm not shocked because, bringing it all back around, Julian Hillard plays David. David is a great character, but he is played none other than by one of the twins of the Maximoffs in WandaVision, who also showed up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. He was also in The Haunting of Hill House. He is becoming a very in-demand actor, if you will, and he is quite good in this.
Yeah, he is actually very solid. I'm impressed for young actors like that. You get a lot of times they're hit or miss. A lot of times you can't bank on them. They're kind of just window dressing. They're not usually asked to handle a lot. He is, and he does well with it. He really does.
Yeah. So this whole opening is exorcism, where they're trying to get the demon cast out. It's a pretty great sequence, actually. Yeah. It's actually, the movie starts a little too strong for its own good because I don't think the movie quite lives up to everything that it starts here. But during the exorcism, Arnie grabs David and tells the demon or devil inside of him to take him instead, right, and possess him and let Arnie go, because Arnie is in the shower at one point and this creepy hand comes over and he starts to scream. Cool. It's a great moment. Great shot.
And that's one thing that's talking about. Chavez did have a couple of awesome shots in here that, like, it showed me how he has progressed a little bit from La Llorona to this. There were a couple of definite whammies that I was happy to see in this kind of film.
He had a couple of bangers in this. I admit.
Oh.
He also does a little bit of aping off of other popular movies, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But there's definitely a shot where a priest shows up to the house during this whole sequence, and it is exactly mirrored off of maybe the greatest exorcism film of all time, The Exorcist. And the only bad thing about doing stuff like that is I'm immediately reminded of A Better Movie.
That's true, and that's always kind of the risk you take when you do that kind of stuff. I mean, you got to know you're not going to hit those heights. You got
right.
Every filmmaker wants to hit those heights, obviously, but you can't like bank on that. It's a bad move, I think, sometimes to do it when you know you're not going to hit that height.
Right, 100%. But it happens, and it is what it is. But the scene is really tense. The scene is really great. Ed is trying to control the situation. They don't really notice fully that Arnie has grabbed the child and decides to be like, you take my body, like, leave him alone. And it's kind of actually a great move. The guy who plays Arnie, his name is Ruairi O'Connor. He's an Irish actor, actually. And I've never really seen him in anything, but he's really quite good in this.
Yeah, he's solid.
And he's for me, the thing that has always made the Conjuring movies work is like the focus on the dynamic of the families around the movies and the Warrens kind of getting caught in the middle of it. Right. This movie doesn't really have that at the end of the day. There's no real family dynamic, but there's a dynamic between him and Sarah Catherine Hook, who plays Debbie, who is his girlfriend, because he's a friend of the family who kind of gets caught up in the middle of everything that's happening.
Right, exactly. So the best part, but you said the one thing you said that they don't notice when Arnie does this. Ed does, and that's the big case of the film in a way. I like the idea,
right? Yeah.
He notices it. It's fine. He does, and that's the part because he has the heart attack, so he can't tell anybody. So it becomes this kind of like thing where we know something that nobody else knows. We are like Ed. We know it, but we can't tell them what's going on. And it's a
because Ed has a heart attack like right away. By the way,
right away.
It happens so fast, like in the middle of all of this.
It's actually a good kind of cool story, like move in a way, because like it does, like it says, it does drive up the tension. Anytime the audience knows something and a character knows something, but we know that whatever reason they can't like express that information, it just raises that tension. It's a very. I want to say one more thing about this beginning sequence. It almost feels like, because this Conjuring film is a lot different than the previous two, not just because James Wan directed it, not because James Wan directed the other two, but the first two Conjuring films were haunted house movies, basically.
Right.
This is not a haunted house movie, but I feel like this scene was set up at the beginning to not only set up the rest of the story, but also to give you that hint of a family in a haunted house, that comfort zone of a Conjuring movie, in order to go, here, have this right up top, because we're not going to give it to you the rest of the time.
Yeah. Oh no, it's 100% being a familial setting and a familiar idea
and
of
familiar.
Like, but it's supposed to feel comforting. It's supposed to feel like something that you know. It's supposed to feel like, oh, I've been here before.
Right.
Because the movie after that no longer at all really hangs out and does any of this like creepy haunted house thing. We move on from that, which is also probably better for the franchise.
It probably is, because if you go, it's one of those things where, like, as a fan, what do you want from a franchise? Part of you thinks they want more of the same. Like, I want to feel what I felt when I watched The Conjuring 1. I want to feel what I felt when I watched The Conjuring 2. But at the same time, you can only do that kind of repetition so much before it does become stale. So a franchise does have to find a way to break through, add something new to the mix. Even if the fans at first are kind of like, in a way, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, 100%. And so I'm really glad that they actually started it that way, because, again, it gives you that thing that you know that you want.
Right.
But then it goes, by the way, Ed's about to have a heart attack. He goes to the hospital.
Right.
And it takes him a month to wake up.
A month, right.
A month passes. He finally wakes up from the heart attack. And his first thing is not like, hey, where's my daughter? Hey, how are things? Where am I? What happened? He's like, Arnie, call them. He's been possessed. And of course, in movie logic, the day he wakes up is the day that Arnie kills someone.
Right, of course. It has to happen at the same time.
It has to happen that way. But what I love in this is that as this is happening, we get the famous Conjuring James Wan shot.
Yes.
Because you have to have the camera swoop into a house and move around to see things in like a one-shot type of thing.
Right.
And so we go through it. Arnie wakes up. He's been feeling really not well. He's not looking real great.
Mm-hmm.
His girlfriend's going through the house. They kind of board animals and dogs. And so she's telling their roommate person that they live with, hey, you check this dog doesn't need to eat, this dog's going home, etc., etc. And she's kind of like going through, the camera's following her through the house. He's telling Arnie, hey, look, my music's not working, hey, can you check the record player? And it's kind of a fun sequence, actually.
It is. It's a chaotic sequence. The guy, the landlord, that's the guy's name. Bruno's landlord. And so it's kind of an interesting power dynamic.
We don't talk about Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno. I'm sorry. So Saul's, not Saul, not our friend Saul, but Saul's. It's actually a very interesting power dynamic there in terms of like he owns the place. Like, he actually owns the kennel in a way, but yet like it's obvious that it's not. It's obviously it's Debbie that's the one in charge of everything. Pretty much, he wants to drink and party. Right, he wants to party and drink and everything else. He's very forward and very.
Am I Bruno?
Well, we don't talk about
Am I Bruno? Because I also like to drink and party.
I don't think you're quite as pushy or as I don't want to say inappropriate. Like it's very forward.
I just more meant the drinking and partying part.
Right. Fair enough. Before we go any further, I do want to just slight callback that I want to mention. The other thing we missed about the first part of the sequence, we get more of Lorraine's visions.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a key point to the rest of the film and something that's actually detrimental to the film for my purpose. It feels like we've gone from Lorraine having these like subtle visions in the first one. I don't know, maybe not even subtle, but they weren't as... It feels like by the time you get to this film, and we'll talk about this more, I think later on, we'll get some more examples of it, we're leaning on her as a deus ex machina. Like in a like...
She's straight up a superhero in this movie. She's straight up a superhero. Yeah, exactly. She's an X-Man.
It's like every time they need something.
Normally we don't text each other while we watch the movies and tell each other what we're thinking.
It's true.
But this was the one time that like I was watching it, I was actively texting him while I was watching it, and I was like, why does Lorraine have superpowers? Like, why did we go so far that she feels like a superhuman being?
Right.
Because that's how it feels.
It does. Because like her visions are so much more clear. She can do anything she wants, and we'll get to it when we get to we'll talk about the sequence later on.
There's a Friday the 13th sequence we're going to get to.
Completely. And
it's weird.
But either way, we're back to the other thing I don't think we mentioned. Whether or not, by the way, guys, I'm sorry if we're a little off track. We did watch this a couple weeks ago. Like usually we watch it the day or two before. So our thoughts might be a little bit not quite as focused as we usually are. But that's okay. We'll get through it. I think before Arnie starts not feeling good and they have the whole sequence there, we do see that when he's on his job. And it's a great shot.
Yeah, he drops the chainsaw, huh?
He drops the chainsaw because he sees something in the window or whatever. And it's a great shot of the chainsaw as he's trying to do it, and it goes down and everything else. It's a great moment.
And the boss yells at him, "Hey, Arnie, what the fuck are you doing?"
Right, exactly. It's another good shot. I give Chavez. I want to give Chavez his due when he deserves it. And that was one of the other ones a shot I really did like. So, okay, moving on. Back to the...
I totally forgot about that shot, to be honest, because again, it's been a little while.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. This all falls on the fact that I got sick last week while we were supposed to be recording it. I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good.
So the kennel sequence happens. Arnie feeling unwell. Bruno keeps trying to give him beer and finally does. And what happens essentially is that Bruno grabs Debbie. He's trying to dance with her, and Arnie gets up and decides to stab him 22 times. While this is happening, Lorraine is calling the local police department and saying, "Look, I know this is how it's going to sound, but something tragic is about to happen. And I think that's almost verbatim what she says.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what. Yep. And they send somebody out.
They send someone out, and they find Arnie walking down the fucking road, and he's covered in blood.
Covered in blood. Yep, all over himself.
But he
doesn't.
I'll love this, though. The cop gets out of the car, and Arnie looks at it and says, I think I hurt someone.
Right.
Or I think someone's hurt. It's such a... No shit, dude. You're covered in blood right now. Someone got hurt. It's such a... Look, I get it. It's a horror movie. I love horror movies. But it's almost so, you think?
Yeah, you think? And I remember who the actor was who played the cop, and he did a great expression on his face. I loved it. It was kind of this, because he exactly was like, yeah, you don't move. You just don't move. We're gonna, it's just a great reaction. I loved it. It was just key moments.
Yeah. So he gets arrested, obviously, for the murder. The Warrens are there, and they decide that they're going to plead not guilty to this case for him by means of demonic possession.
Which is interesting at first, because they check for possession. And the demon, and they can't find the demon in there. So they're like, well,
because he's reading a Bible, and
they use it. It's kind of cool. He's not possessed, but they still are willing to give it a shot. And it's that moment. It's one of those few definitive moments from this movie that call back to the feeling of the previous movies. Is that they still are going to put not life on the line, but they're going to go out on a limb in belief of somebody who they believe in. I believe this guy. He was a good guy. I believe that there's no way he could have done this without being possessed. Even though I don't understand, and even though it's a great moment, he's like, there's nothing we can do. He's not possessed. This is out of our hands. And so you want to basically want to abandon him? No, we just don't know what we're going to do yet. kind of thing. I like that side of it.
I love that too. And then so that this obviously. The reason that this movie was made is that apparently this case in real life gained a lot of traction off of all this. And so there's a great sequence where they're finally in the court and they're talking to the judge. And this is why I kind of wanted the movie to be this way, because they go into the chambers and they're talking to the judge and they're like, look, we're pleading not guilty on demonic possession. And she's looking at him kind of crazy. And they look at her and they go, look, you guys have them, put their hand on a Bible and swear in front of God for every time that someone goes up here, and they swear to God. So if the jury is meant to believe in God and the court is meant to believe in God, why should they also not believe in the devil?
It's a great line delivered so perfectly.
Patrick Wilson fucking kills it.
By Patrick Wilson. I want to find I want to try to find the exact quote, because that's it's so.
It's one of my favorite moments in the movie. It might be my favorite moment in the movie, to be honest with you.
It might be the court.
It just works so well.
Here it is. The court accepts the existence of God every time a witness swears to tell the truth. I think it's about time to accept the existence of the devil, and it's so well delivered. And then. The funny part about it is, what I love about it to me is that the response, it's not the judge, the lawyer, by the way, it's the lawyer. And the lawyer says, how are you going to convince the jury if you can't even convince me? And then instead of showing anything, it just cuts to them going into the court, or being them in the court, and showing the lawyer all screwed up. Obviously, they showed her everything. And sometimes that's a great case of less is more. We don't need to see what she saw. Our imagination fills in those blanks perfectly.
100%, and it works, and it's great, and I was really glad that they took that swing at it. But again, it also proves to my point, the way I was feeling going into this is that I kind of wanted it to be that way more. I would have liked this movie to continue being more like this, because there's something to be said almost about the supernatural angle of them now trying to convince a jury and peers or whatever in the existence of the devil. Not that obviously the movie isn't entertaining, but it keeps promising this idea of, let's take this in front of a jury. Let's take this in front of the courts. Let's really lean in on this. And then we don't get any of it. You know what I'm saying? It kind of plays its hand too early. Yeah. I almost wish that I almost wish that all the stuff with the disciples of the Ram cult was earlier in the movie.
Yeah, I get that.
Which reminds me, yes, the disciples of the Ram cult, who you first see in Annabelle, the worst movie in this franchise, finally has some sort of merit here.
Yeah, and I was actually happy to see that. Even though I'm not a fan of the first Annabelle, I was happy to see this part of it brought back because at least it provides a connected universe, which is something I love. I love connected universes.
Me too.
And so anytime you get a callback, it's a rewarding. It rewarded us for watching that piece of trash movie. To a degree.
That's the fucking truth.
Not gonna lie. No,
look, if you haven't listened to our Annabelle podcast, please go back and listen to it. But
PJ and I are very positive people. We very rarely go scorched earth on anything. That was one of the things that definitely was not that it earned our wrath. We thought
it earned it. That was the wrath of two mediocre white dudes right there.
Yes, indeed it was. So you had the court sequence in the beginning. I like that. We do. Well, how we get to the Ram, disciples of the Ram, is that the Warrens, obviously, they visit the homestead and they see what's going on, and they find that really weird witch's totem underneath. By the way, the crawl space thing. I saw this in this. I saw this in like M. Night Shyamalan, The Visit. Also, those kind of things. I guess I have claustrophobia to a bit. That kind of thing freaks me out. Not gonna lie. Like I get a little tense when I start seeing people crawling under houses in those small crawl spaces. It's freaky.
Anything small space is always automatic. Me getting because I am claustrophobic. So I immediately start to tense up, and it works really well. Depending on how it's done. M. Night did it okay in The Visit. I'm not the biggest fan of that movie. Hot take, I'm sure, but this one,
the grandmother racing through while they're chasing it through the. That's what got me a little bit.
Look, I'm not going to talk. Let's not go down that way because the last thing we need is to get another 25 minutes off track.
Okay, fine. That's fine. All right, fair enough.
M. Night, your day will come, and it may not be as pretty as people think, unless it's the Unbreakable movies. But even then, Glass exists. So. Regardless, I like this sequence. Basically, what they do is they go back to the house. They're talking to Debbie, and they're kind of like, look, we know something's wrong. He's not quite right. Like, where did all this start? And there's a great flashback, actually, where they start talking about what had happened to David before David got possessed, and it was when they moved in. And there's this great sequence where they're showing him in this room, and he's on the waterbed. And this is a sequence that was actually in the trailer. And he's on the waterbed, and he's kind of laying on it, and he's just sitting there, and the waterbed starts to move. Like, something's in the waterbed, and he's kind of like, wait, what?
Well, you see that great part where you see the face.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. Because first he's laying there, and, like, it's like something ripples underneath him, and he kind of, like, looks, and he's a little, like, weirded out, and he doesn't really think about it again. But then this like face starts to like appear through the waterbed, like kind of. It's such a great scene, and so and then it cuts back to this. Might is be Lorraine, by the way.
Let me just interject real quick. Might be the best use of a waterbed in a horror movie since Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4.
No, it is number one. But the other thing is to your point. Actually, what's funny is this actually ties to what you were saying. Lorraine has seen this.
Yeah,
remember. Because this is another one of her clear vision things, and this is one of the things that actually bothers me a little bit. And this is just from a PJ standpoint of what the universe had set up before. The thing I liked in The Conjuring 2 when we saw a lot of Lorraine's visions during the Amityville stuff was that it felt otherworldly.
Right.
I didn't like everything feeling so clear and concise and so easy and like she was just viewing it like a memory. I loved that almost...
the vagary, the vagueness of it. Yeah.
What is it, the further in the Insidious movies though? That's kind of what it felt like was like the further almost not quite as deep as the further, but like it's kind of the feel that it gave me. Right. And so she's having this vision of what's happening. It feels a little too clear, but like it's a good sequence. They move this rug because the bed pops in the sequence and they're looking and Debbie goes, well, look, it's just, water damage.
Right.
And there's this ring on the ground, and they're like, that's not water damage.
Right.
And that's when Lorraine goes under the house, and that's when she just finds this little ram of her cult totem device thing.
Right.
And she's like, look, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Your family was basically hunted by the ram cult and cursed. And we don't know why they chose you, but they did. And you're just like the unwilling participants in whatever the ram cult has set out to do.
Do we ever find out? Was there a reason, or was it just random? I can't remember.
It's just random as far as the movie is concerned.
Okay,
in my recollection, because at that point there really wasn't a lot for the movie to say. This is about the point, honestly, outside of when we meet up with Father Kastner. Not a lot happens in this movie other than the relationship between Lorraine and Debbie.
Yeah. There's a lot that doesn't happen at this point. I will say that introducing Kastner, though, is a stroke of genius because, goddamn it, anytime John Noble appears, that's going to be a win for me.
Oh, dude, 100%. I will never not love John Noble in anything. The fact that man is 73 and basically disappeared off the face of the earth as far as movies were concerned until 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And now is arguably one of the most interesting actors on the face of the planet for me.
Yeah.
When he pops up at TV, movies, it doesn't really matter. I will watch John Noble in anything. If you've never watched Fringe, please watch Fringe.
Definitely watch Fringe.
It's just so funny that he's in this because Kastner ends up being the most interesting character for me in a lot of ways, other than the Warrens. And I think I texted you while I was watching this. I was like, so Father Kastner, HBO Max series when? Because they keep talking about all this stuff that he did, and he was involved in putting down the church.
Right.
Or the cult. Because, that's right. That's why we never find out, really. Because the cult's been put down at that point.
Right,
in 81,
exactly. Yep.
As far as the timeline is concerned. He was the one who brought the cult to their knees and got them, disbanded. So, he's such a great character, and I really, really like him in this movie.
I gotta tell you, it's funny. It seems like the priests in the films tend to be the great characters we want to see more of. Like Tony Amendola is one.
Yeah.
The one from Curse of the La Llorona, I can't remember his name now at that point, but he was not the priest there. He was the spiritual guy, the former priest or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Shaman or whatever. Again, all characters that really won me over. I wanted to see more from them. And that's exactly Raymond Cruz, the guy who played. That's right. I loved him in that. I loved John Noble in that. I could see all of these characters getting spin-offs, maybe even an anthology spin-off, just those. An anthology, The Priests of Conjuring.
Yeah, The Priests of the Conjuring. Do a series where you hang out with those characters dealing with random possessions for 45 minutes an episode. I'd watch the shit out of that on HBO Max.
Absolutely. So we're all in on that.
So they go to see Father Kastner after all this has happened, and they're like, hey, so we found this thing, and we know that you kind of dealt with them. And he goes, look, I'm going to take you downstairs. I'll show you all of my room. I'll show you the stuff I know, but don't get involved.
Right.
Is kind of his warning. Don't get involved.
Yeah. Right. And that's scary.
It's scary, but Lorraine gets weirded out because he goes, look, come inside with me. I'm going to show you this room.
Which, I got to say, I got to interject. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I got to interject this. I found that a little odd. I found it a little odd. Because she has the same room in her own house. She has the same room in her own house.
You stepped on what I was going to say. I'm sorry. You did. You stepped on what I was going to say. So the reveal for me that's so interesting, fuck you, is that he has the antithesis of their room, though.
Right. It is.
Because, he does this thing where he goes, look, would you leave guns on the streets? His reasoning is the same, but his is all these almost creepier cult items.
Right.
Because he apparently really dealt with cults and things like that. They're picking up things that have been supernaturally possessed. He's dealing with shit that's dark magic.
Right.
And it's a very different vibe. And Lorraine walks in and she goes, we should not be here.
Right.
And I love that.
I loved and didn't love it. I just still felt even though it was a little bit antithesis to it, I didn't buy it like you did. I kind of just said I feel like it's still demonic stuff. It's still evil stuff that's been
I'm gonna
kept.
fucking mute you now.
I will say you can't. You're not. I don't think you can. I will say I understand your argument, and I will say, given that we know later on, as far as John Noble's daughter goes or anything else, that maybe it's not kept up like their room is kept up to a degree, and that might be part of it. Because the eventuality is we do find more underneath the house there than we know is there. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's what maybe I can convince myself that I can be okay with it because of that. But my initial thought when watching it was kind of like, it was strange to me. I was kind of like, well, it's the same type of thing you're dealing with. So is only you allowed to have that kind of room? But either way. Moving on.
I don't like your sass right now.
You're going to have to deal with it. You're just going to have to deal with
it. I guess so. So,
Oi!
Go to him. Oi! Prick!
Spaceman!
All right, Donna. So, basically, they go to him. He goes, look, don't really get involved if you can. But they also find out that this girl in Danvers, Massachusetts has been missing. Her name is Katie. Right. Fun fact, by the way, for our listeners, there is actually a prequel comic series done by DC and Vertigo that chronicles Katie's disappearance.
Right.
If you actually have the Blu-ray 4K digital version of the movie, they have the motion comic of the first issue, but they don't have all of them for some reason.
That's weird.
So there is a story about Katie that exists in the Conjuring universe that was done as a comic if you are willing to or want to check it out for any reason. Just thought I'd put that out there for you. It also every issue also has like a small like one-off comic also at the end, like a small one-off story that's tied to other Conjuring things. Like one of them has to do with the ferryman.
Oh, okay, cool. Very cool.
So this exists. If you look into it, it's out there. I think it's 5-6 issues. So check it out. Katie was also stabbed 22 times, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
But no one ever found the body. They don't really know what happened to this person. But they realized that if this totem is somehow involved in the same thing, then someone was also possessed.
Right.
And they never found Katie's body. So they go out into the woods. Well, actually, first they go to a police station. And this is where it starts to get a little dicey for me, because they're sitting down talking to the chief, and they're like, look, we know this person went missing. We know she was stabbed. And so the cop, being like, there's no way you should know this, he pulls out a bunch of knives and goes, you're going to tell me which one of these she was stabbed with. And Ed is like, look, this isn't a sideshow circus. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And what does Lorraine do? It's this one.
Well, I gotta say, the scene is done well because of it. It's kind of a typical. Well, it's a typical scene, like it's something we've seen before in this kind of situation. The psychic visits the cop. The cop is skeptical. Oh, the psychic's got to show him that she's right and everything else. And the cop is very skeptical, and I get that. And it is handled. I mean, the timing of it's really well because Ed does have that line, and instead of like it's like one of those things where you think that the argument's going to happen, Lauren's just like, yep, it's this one. But at the same time, I agree. It's too easy. The powers are a crutch to have it done that clearly, and the worst. But it's worse later on. It's worse when they get to the forest itself. It's like awfully worse because here we go. The priest or the cop agrees. Goes okay. We'll look into it. Let's see what you can do. You showed me the right knife. Let's see what you can do. Even though he even says, well, you had a 1 in 3 shot anyway, or 1 in 4 shot, whatever it was. So they drive out, and they have the other moment. Oh, you missed a turn. And it's like...
This is when I started to realize we were in trouble.
Yeah, me too. It just didn't feel Conjuring enough to me, Mel. It felt like X-Men in a way. I'm kind of like, it's too CSI. I didn't mind the CSI aspect to it to a degree. I didn't mind the investigation aspect to it or taking it out of the haunted house. On paper, that sounds kind of like a cool idea, but it just felt like, then when she relives the whole thing, it's just too much, too quickly, and it's too easy. It becomes too easy. But I will say she does have the moment where she does get in the position where the girl was found, and she relives the night, and she finds everything else, and she runs after the girls because they find where the body's actually dumped over or whatever. In over the cliff into the water. But there's a good moment there, I will agree, where she almost falls in because of the spiritual element of it. And Ed, it shows that heart attack thing again. It tenses up. You find out he hasn't taken his pills because he's not good at that, I guess. And that's another good familial moment again that they get to spike in there, and it almost saves it for me. But I can't get over the fact that it's kind of felt like, what are we doing here at this point? What are we doing?
This is the Friday the 13th sequence too for me, and the reason I call it that is not because it feels like Jason Voorhees. Moreover, it feels like they filmed it in the same place that they filmed a lot of the Friday movies because it's all set in the middle of the woods, and like it's got the same sort of like weird slasher vibes. Yep. And the idea of the sequence is great. My biggest problem just becomes that, well, why do we spend like so much time with it? This is a long sequence that leads to a scene that, for all intents and purposes, and I'm maybe this is me being a little harder on the movie than I should be, we know neither of them can die.
Right.
Because we know in real life they live. So you're not going to take this to, at this point, like throw either of them under the bus and kill them out of nowhere. We know that it can't happen.
Right.
So it just seems like a weird thing to like lead her to the edge and stuff like that. But they find the body of Katie, which is really ultimately the important part of the movie because you finally find out what happened to her, which is good for the cop who finally gets to say, look, we find the body, which is, this is kind of forgotten about until the end of the movie. I like there's a shot of him like hanging out that someone's put like a little grave type thing there for her and things like that. But it's like a weird thing for me that this whole like stretch of sequence feels too much.
Yeah.
Because then it leads to the next sequence, which is in the funeral home.
You just stepped on me. I was going to say that. It makes it worse when it's followed up by something that it's just too much. It's too much, and it's followed up by a scene which is equally too much. So it's like you're getting hammered with this stuff now.
And it's not that the sequences themselves are bad. Like, I don't want anyone to... I don't want to undersell. I like Michael Chavez's like swing, I guess is the word to use for it.
Right.
But I don't love that they're back to back because they feel so tonally out of place with the Conjuring movies. Not necessarily the spin-offs, but in what we're doing, because this next sequence, they break into a morgue and Lorraine touches a body and it basically comes back to life.
Right.
And I was texting you during this sequence, and I went, we really... And again, it's not that I hadn't seen this before. I was rewatching it, but I don't revisit this movie.
No, I revisit either.
It's what, almost a year old? It's not out of, like, spite. It's that I tend to go back to the movies that I like the most, which is the first two, Annabelle Comes Home and Annabelle Creation.
Unless I'm going to be doing a complete run-through.
Right. And so I don't go back to this one a lot because I don't love it like I love the other two. And this is why. I was reminded very quickly, I don't love this sequence. This sequence in the funeral home is so, like, it feels out of place for me. Because the thing that the Conjuring movies themselves have done is that it still feels grounded.
Right.
There's not a single part of me that ever thought that they would reanimate a corpse and bring it back to life.
Although I will say, imagery-wise, that corpse... that big ass corpse, whatever, was actually probably one of the freakiest images of the film. Like when it's running at it, I think it's well done. Imagery is really well done.
The imagery is not the problem.
Right.
It's that it just feels not tonally like the rest of the series.
Right.
For me.
It's because she's also just using those powers, and it's like, what are we doing here? Although I will say the best part about this sequence, and combining it with the last sequence too, is the discovery that the connection works both ways that she has.
Correct.
That is a great moment.
There's someone controlling all this, by the way, which PLD has already spoiled. Spoiler alert, it's Kessler's daughter.
Yes. Kastner's daughter is the one that we find that at the end.
Did I say Kessler?
Yeah, Kessler. Someone I don't know who Kessler is.
Kastner's daughter.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say Kastner and let it go.
Dear Reddit, when we make mistakes, we own the mistakes. This is PJ owning the mistake that he said the wrong thing. I just want that noted.
Fair point.
I love you, Reddit. Someone's going to post about this later that I took a shot at Reddit, and it was more just a very funny line because, look, I'll be honest, a little behind the scenes, PLD and I do read the comments on Reddit. We respond to a lot of what you guys are saying on Reddit for the Schmodown. Someone said something to us last week. There was a challenge in one of the matches, and this person was very angry.
Yeah, it was very angry, Elf.
Very angry, Elf. I got text messages from competitors who were like, "Damn, you and PLD, like, you keep your cool." I was like, "I'm aware."
You're professional.
We are professional, and so this person allegedly was like, "You guys need to own your mistakes," and I said, I will always own my mistakes. The thing is this is not a mistake the way that you are saying that it is a mistake, because it was not a mistake.
You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Princess Bride, I understood that reference.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But so I will always own my mistakes. This is just one of those times it was not a mistake. The Kessler thing versus Kastner, that was a mistake. And I owned it. Just wanted that noted.
But yeah, I did a little spoiler earlier. But I figure if you haven't watched this movie at least once and you're here, well, you're gonna get spoiled.
If they're here and they haven't watched it, I like to think it's just because they're here for us, and that's really sweet, actually.
That is very sweet. That is a nice thought. So I'm sorry for spoiling, but it's kind of hard to have a 2-hour-long review of something and not be spoiling it. I don't know how that people do the non-spoiler reviews for that long. But I will say, yes, we had a spoiler. But that's when we find out that the connection works both ways. We don't know it's Kastner's daughter at this point. We just know that there is we find the witch who's been cursing people, and that's a strong moment that almost saves the sequence for me. Not quite, because I'm still annoyed at the power stuff, but it works in that it starts a good drive towards the third act at that point. And at that point, they return to their house in Connecticut, and they investigate the stuff. They start investigating it further. This is where they really start Scooby-Dooing the shit out of things, as Doc Strange would say.
That is correct.
And it's got pluses and minuses to it. I'm happy that we get to see more of Shannon Cook as Drew Thomas there. It's a nice recall because he's not in a lot of he's in the beginning part, but don't see him for a little bit. He really takes over some of the investigation parts with Ed as they figure out where these things are coming from. Again, is there some moments where it's like, is it too easy the way they kind of go from point A to point B to point C? Maybe.
Yes. No, the answer is yes, and that's fine because it's a movie. But That's the thing. Like, look, we can be hard on stuff all the time, and I've been hard on it kind of all night. But the truth is like movie logic is movie logic, and we go into movies expecting movie logic. I don't necessarily expect real life logic to literally anything. That's why I can joke up top that, of course, the day that Ed wakes up from the heart attack is also the day that, Arnie's killing someone. Like, it is what it is.
Right.
That's fine because movie logic. But you have to be able to meet the movie logic on its movie logic as long as it's not breaking its own logic.
But speaking of movie logic and things we do not like, we have a sequence here where we find that the Warrens' house is also cursed. They find the totem in his office after Ed's attacks Lorraine and Drew has to stop it. But my big problem here, where the fuck is their daughter?
Yeah, so you and I were texting. Actually, one thing I want to note in this sequence, it's not that their house is cursed. It's that someone sends a curse to the house through the flowers because they put the totem inside it. One of the things that we should note in this entire sequence before it happens, and I texted you this, the parents send them a nice vase of flowers at one point. The parents are the family. Yeah, I appreciated the callback. The parents were the family. Yeah, how sweet. I texted you that. I didn't catch that the first time. I was like, oh, that's very nice. The parents sent them things because the parents are the family from the first movie. Right. So the parents were still thinking about the Warrens. How very nice of them. Yes. But, however, yes, so some stuff starts happening at the house and you're like, so the daughter's just not in this, which is such a weird choice considering Annabelle Comes Home is the one set before this. Now, maybe it's because in real life, Judy does not want to be involved in, that way in the Warren cases, quote unquote. But at the same time, we literally just had a movie where she was the main focus.
She was the focus, and it seemed like she was going into her parents' footsteps. Now, I know, like you just said, the real life Judy Warren does not want to follow in her family's footsteps. Her husband does, but she's very much been, I'm not dealing with that. But this is such a fictionalized version anyway at this point. And
it has been since the first one, really. But
right.
Yes.
So why do you choose? I mean, she obviously was okay with McKenna Grace ever doing it in Annabelle Come Home. So
Correct.
Why not do it further in this one? It actually would only have made sense for her to be more involved. And quite frankly, I think we said it. Annabelle Come Home. I'd love to see if a series would. As like the next generation, let's get Judy involved even more. She's gone from this film. She appears maybe in the hospital sequence with Ed at one point, and that's really about it.
She shows up at the beginning during the hospital sequence, and that's pretty much it at that point, which is so bizarre to me.
Yeah,
because again, one of the things about cinematic universes, I'm going to kind of rant a little bit here for a second. Cinematic universes in their existence, the idea is that they should play off of each other, right?
Right.
Going all the way back to the 40s.
Right.
Because the original cinematic universe was not the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It wasn't the DC Cinematic Universe. The original cinematic universe was the Universal Monsters. Did they play fast and loose with some of the continuity? Sure. But the characters were all Lon Chaney Jr. They were playing with Frankenstein. They were playing with the same actors for the most part. Or if you weren't, you were playing with the ones who had been recast as those characters over time. Right. And you were playing within the same confines. You accepted that, the continuity wasn't right, but you were playing in the world. It felt familiar. You knew what was going on. Why did we have an entire movie about Judy Warren before this to not have Judy Warren be a part of this one? It's such an odd choice.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm mad about it too because it was such a great, because it was so good in the previous film, and it was set up so perfectly, and yet here it is. The whole franchise is about family and about familial helping each other out.
Wait, this is the Fast franchise?
That's the crossover. I'm going fast, and
that was a shout out to our patron John Lastrina.
John, love John. Hey, you know what? That'd be actually great. I mean, you got James Wan doing both. We could have him do a great crossover between Conjuring.
Not wrong.
Vin Diesel joins. Dama Toretto just drives Ed and Lorraine around.
Wouldn't be the oddest crossover of all time. I'll say that much.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. I think we can pitch something here. We got something in our.
We got something here, but look, you're not wrong. And the thing is maybe it was that McKenna Grace obviously is not old enough to be Judy in the 80s comparatively to when you meet her. Maybe you don't want to recast her again, and that's fine too. But the thing is that, and maybe this is you and I, maybe this is our problem, but you set up Judy as a character that I think should be more involved. So why is she not involved in this movie at all? To the point that when weird shit starts happening in the house again, where she's been, by the way, where weird shit has clearly happened as far as this universe has told us, that she's not the first person to be like, look, something's wrong.
Right. Even if you want to do that, have her written off somehow. She's off at school, or she is on a trip.
She's camping with friends. I would have bought that.
Completely. Absolutely. It's okay, at least they mention her. They're Ed and Lorraine, who love her to death, are not even going to mention what's going on with her? What? It makes no sense to me at all. It's so bad. It makes
no sense. It's so weird. But Eugene Bondadurnit, by the way, who plays Isla, who is Father Kastner's daughter. She's such an interesting presence because in this sequence, we start to see the flashes again of her kind of controlling stuff. She's got a very specific look. She's got a very specific feel. She's very interesting.
Yeah, she's got a very non-traditional, actress look, and it works so well for the role she's playing. Yeah. I mean, it's not saying she looks like a cultist or a witch. It just, in costume, she does sell it really well. You know what
it is? And I'll say this. She's 6 foot tall in real life, but she's slender, slender and very. Her face has a very sharp look.
Yes,
and so in that it creates a look that you're not used to seeing. Right. It's very creepy. Not in
It is.
again, I don't want to say it's bad. That's not what I'm saying. We're not used to seeing stuff like this. She was actually in The Hunger Games Part 2. She played a character named Tigress. So if you've seen The Hunger Games Part 2, she's in it. That's like her biggest claim to fame until this, to be honest. Right. She's done a lot of TV work and things since, but just a thing to think about.
And I gotta say, I mean, in Hunger Games, she was definitely like behind a lot of makeup. Anyway, I believe she was. I think Tigress was.
You want me to reveal something real quick? I'll say it here. I don't think a lot of people know this. It's very funny. I've never seen the last movie.
Really?
I liked the ending of Part 3 or of the third movie so much, even though it was PETA like in traction, like freaking out. I was like, look, the series could end here and I'm fine. And I just never went back.
Well, patrons, you're going to have to ask us to do the Hunger Games franchise at some point and make PJ watch the last film.
Yeah. And you know what the funniest part?
What?
I own it.
That actually does not surprise me or shock me at all.
I bought a box set. It's in there, and I've just never gone back. I always rewatch Catching Fire. Sorry. That's
fine. Continue. That's fine. No problem there. I do like she when you put her in this kind of cast, she's able to have, she's a look that's easily able to creep up, so to speak. When she gets into her costume and gets to that makeup, or not even makeup, lack of makeup, probably to make her jawline, she looks like the part, and she has a kind of scary look about her, and that's not a bad thing at all. She's actually, I look at some pictures, she's a very beautiful woman, but like in this case, it works for what she's trying to do. And she actually does a great job in this role. The role is like something that I wish they had developed more for it, because we don't get a whole lot except for, like, we have John Noble to give her like the villain qualifier. I don't know if you guys ever watched Action Movie Anatomy. There's a hero qualifier, which is somebody will tell you why the hero is such a badass, or why somebody is such a badass. Usually it's like, oh, this guy has Purple Heart, he's moved mountains. They kind of set it up that way. We really hear mostly about her in a scene later on with John Noble talking about her. And he does a great job setting it up. I just wish we could have gotten a little bit more with her, because when she does have something, she hits it out of the park, I thought.
I agree with you 100%. Number one, was that a shot at me, by the way? Do you think I'd never listened to, that action podcast? That was one of my favorite things back in the day.
No, that was more towards our audience. I don't know who does that. It's an older podcast. It's like, it's the same exact thing that when we talk about movies like 20 years old now, like that podcast is like 5 years old now. Do you have people watch it? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, but she's very good in this. And so at this point, one of the things we haven't brought up really, and it's because, again, I'm going to be honest, I like the movie fine comparative to the others, but not a lot happens in this movie. We really haven't talked about that. One of the things I like about in the movie, and this kind of ties into what we're getting into, is that the biggest focus in this movie outside of her and Kastner, did it again.
You were closer this time, though. It went from Kessler to Kastler. Now it's Kastler. You got it, though. You'll get there.
Yeah. Was that there's a lot of sequences between Debbie and Lorraine where they're dealing with these flashbacks to when her and Ed got together.
Right.
And in those sequences, you're meant to believe that the stuff happening between Arnie and Debbie is that they see their love in the same way that the Warrens see their love. That's the familial aspect of this movie, because everyone else is missing. That Arnie's really not in the movie. Like, we could talk about the stuff that happens in the prison, but it's really not that interesting. Like, nothing happens. The devil tries to possess him again, and he almost dies again.
Yeah, they try to make him kill himself with the broken glass. That they have the priest give him the holy water, and he breaks it. It's cool stuff, I guess, but past the time, I guess. But it's not like anything that's really looking to delve into. It's not
interesting. And the thing I was going to say is that it turns out it's not the devil.
Right.
It's Isla.
It is all Isla.
Because Isla's whole thing becomes that the only reason she's doing all this is that she made a pact with the devil, and she has to hold up her side of the bargain. And her side of the bargain,
a demon, not necessarily
or a demon. Yeah, I look, they're all the same. And
wow.
I said what I said.
Wow.
And the point is that she made this bargain, and she owes this demon a soul.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
and that was the whole thing. She owes it a soul, and she's going after this specific person because he was the one who got possessed.
Right. Makes sense.
And it's just a weird thing because she's so good in the role, and she doesn't have a lot of dialogue. She's got a very specific look. When Lorraine finally figures out what happens, she gets there. Noble is dead.
Mm.
He's been murdered by his daughter. She talks to him, by the way, first. And he goes, look, I fucked up. I hid that I had this daughter. I'm sorry.
I'm a priest.
I'm a priest. I had a daughter. I wasn't supposed to say anything. And this is why I wasn't supposed to say anything. And the problem is that she was kind of weird when she was little. And I was hoping it would go away. And then it turned out she became a fucking cultist.
Well, that began because she got interested in him. It was this great moment of responsibility because he said that he was obsessed with bringing down the cult and the followers around. He's obsessed. He had the room. He is the this is where the antithesis comes in. He is the antithesis of the Warrens. The Warrens had a kid. They have a secret room, and that kid is actually sometimes a little interested. But this is a case where, in this case, Isla is just as interested, and John Noble's character doesn't stop it. I think he doesn't have the wife to help him at all because he's worried. He loses his family, I believe, except for Isla. He's raising her by herself, and he's got this room down there, so he can't do that because he can't do what the Warrens can because that's why the Warrens are the heroes and he can't. So, and he's a tragic character. He's not evil. He's not bad. He just wants his kid to be good, wants his kid to be okay. But he knows that at the end he makes the good call. He knows that she's gone too far and there's nothing he can do. So he tries to help out as much as he can, which isn't very much at that point. He's an older man. But the funny thing is, real quick, before they go, part of the Scooby doing, I love the fact that they figure out where she has to go because of the train tracks, because Lorraine keeps hearing the train whistle in her ears, and they're able to map that out. That whole thing made me chuckle the whole time. Like, really, this is what they're Scooby doing. And but the best moment of Scooby doing is when they realized that Katie was not cursed far away. She was actually cursed at Fairfield University where she went. And that was able to make the whole process together. At that point, that moment, as soon as Ed realizes, Ed and Drew figure out this is the wherever it is, it has to focus on here, but Lorraine's already gone. So Ed has to head out there. He's like, call cops, I'm going to head out there.
Ed, who could have a heart attack at any minute, as the movie has made clear. By the way.
Several times, because he never takes his pills.
We have not talked about Patrick Wilson acts the shit out of having to have a cane.
Yes, he does.
Because I'm going to be honest with you guys. I never buy in any moment that I think that of all people in the world, Patrick Wilson needs to have a cane.
Right.
But they sell the shit out of Patrick Wilson having to have a cane.
I love Patrick Wilson. I'm not going to lie.
No, that's not a dig at that.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying how much I love him. I love him for that.
I just wanted to be sure that you didn't think that's what I was saying.
No. He's good at that. It's great to have the moment where Lorraine and Isla are fighting to a degree, and Ed gets to show up during it, of course. That's right. We did mention, or we forgot to mention that they discover that through Drew. This is Drew found a book. The only way to break the curse was to destroy the altar that was used to make the curse happen. There's a lot of convenience in this movie, and convenience is okay. Like you said before, movie logic is movie logic, and convenience is okay. Sometimes it gets a little too much. It leans a little bit too heavy on it. And at times I feel like it did lean a little too much to the point where it was taking me out a little bit. And that's probably why I rank this one a little lower than the other ones, for example.
I'm going to be honest with you in saying that I don't love a lot of this third act. Now continue.
Yeah, I don't love a lot of third act either. I think once we get to the final battle, so to speak, or whatever.
Which is an actual battle, by the way, comparative to the other ones. That's why I don't love this. It becomes weirdly physical versus the stuff that we've seen in the first two. Not that there wasn't. People are going to say, well, haven't you seen the first two? Clearly stuff happens. Yes, stuff actually happens that is more physical, but there's something about the way that this plays out that I don't like, because in the first two, you were always still dealing with a demon of sorts. This one, you're dealing with a human.
Right.
It's a weird thing. I don't know.
It is weird. It is very different. Although That being said, the one part about it that is good is I am a sucker for these things, and that's me. I'm a positive lover of this type of stuff. When Ed gets bewitched, Ed chases Lorraine down, but Lorraine has to remind him of who he really is and their love and everything else, and Ed's able to fight back. I actually like that shit. I'm a sucker for that shit. I'm not gonna lie. So that particular ending of the battle is fine by me. I like that. But then they kind of break the altar, and that's it. It's like I felt like,
and this is not a thing that I normally lean on.
mm-hmm.
It kind of bums me out. I'm glad Ed shows up. I'm glad that that he's there. I kind of wish it was Lorraine who breaks it. It takes any urgency out of the fact that she was the one who got there first. It takes all the urgency out of her as a character in the moment.
Yeah.
I really wish it was her who had like, I almost wish that Ed was always outside of it, like trying to get into the room, and that Lorraine ultimately is the one who breaks it, because the whole movie, she's the one on the track. She's the one doing everything. Look, she's clearly an X-Man. She's got fucking powers. She can do all this. And then Ed walks in and fucking breaks it.
He's the closer. That's what they're calling the right-hander, and to strike out the side of the ninth inning.
It's just kind of a bummer. You know what I'm saying?
No, I get that. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
I was thinking that really hard while I was watching it. I was like, that's such a weird choice, ultimately, and that's not a thing I think about a lot. This is going to sound really bad. I don't normally, like, buy into the arguments about stuff like that, but something about it in this movie in particular, like, really bothered me.
Right.
Because Lorraine, the entire movie, is the one who is, like, on top of all of it, in the middle of all of it.
Right.
She's the one connected to all of it. She's seen everything. She knows where to go. She did all of it. She's the one who shows up and talks to the father before all of it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is she not the one who ultimately also breaks the altar?
Right. That's a good point. It's a very solid point. I'm not going to lie.
I was thinking about it, like, the whole time, and it just kind of bummed me out while I was watching it, because I felt like it should have been her. I really did.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really think about it as much. I think I did think about it, but it didn't bother me as much as it bothers you. But hearing your passionate plea about it, it does make me realize that you are right. It should have been her, and I think that now.
Yeah,
just kind of sucks.
I think it would have been actually a stronger thing if, like, Ed had been outside of it, because ultimately, if you look at The Conjuring 1 and 2, right? The Conjuring 1 and 2 is them as a duo.
Right.
The Conjuring 2 is about her making sure that he survives.
Right.
So why shouldn't the third one be that he's locked out, and it's about her making sure she survives to go back home to him?
Right. I get that.
Like, it just as a character arc, just as I don't know, man. It felt weird to me while I was watching it, because this whole movie is about how she's so tapped into it, and she's not the one who closes. And that just felt weird.
Right.
I was thinking about it a lot, and I've been thinking about it for fucking 2 weeks now, or however long it's been since we were supposed to record. And it just kept eating away at me, and I was like, this should have been it.
It should have been.
It should have been the move. And that's a weird thing for me to think. And maybe I'm growing as a person having this conversation.
You are. You're definitely growing as a person. You're always growing as a person.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Anytime. I think that's what you're here for. I'm here for. You know what I mean? But all right. Well, they say like, Ed, all right. So Ed saves the day as he does. It is what it is.
Because men.
Because of men. That's right. But at the end of this, they go back and we finally get the ending. A great ending, great nice little ending. They have with the family getting back together, but we have Ed, of course, having a moment with Lorraine where the whole past relationship kind of comes into a finale with the gazebo moment at the end.
One in their house, or outside the house, rather. But
right, yeah. So it's a nice place. Like we Arn still lose the case, but only gets manslaughter instead of like anything like death or anything like that. So it's like it's a victory in and of itself. They couldn't win the case, which is right how it happened, but they did do enough to prevent him from being killed and get right. And he gets to marry Debbie in prison.
In prison, by the way.
In prison,
yeah, I was like, that might be one of my favorite all-time captions in anything in a real life movie, where it's like, Every movie that is like a real life thing ends with the captions, and in this one, it's like he was still tried,
Right?
He still went to prison, and then they got married, and they're happily married still.
Right, and it's like, what? Okay, that's fair. That's fine. All right. And that's like really the ending of the movie at that point. I mean, I was also saying, like, any last points that you wanted to make about it before we went to ranking it and rating it and that stuff?
Look, ultimately, like, I think it's a good movie. I think it's a lesser entry in the overall franchise, just because I think that Chavez still hasn't quite gotten to that area that he needs to be in to make a movie that is as interesting or as character driven as some of the others. I think he loses track of what it is, and some of that script stuff too, but it's definitely a better effort from him than Curse of La Llorona. It's not my favorite overall, but it's not my least favorite either. And it's all because Vera and Patrick Wilson are in the movie.
That's what it comes down to, is that you can do a lot just by casting them in these roles in this kind of movie. It already gets you that first couple steps down the road to a successful movie. At the end of the day, you know what? Let's just get into it. Let's rank them, because then we can talk about the franchise and everything else. So, what would you rank this one? Do you want me to tell you what you've done so far?
All right. Well, look, I'm not going to ask you to tell me, but if I went 7, is that pretty much fall in line with the words that I have said at this point?
Out of 11, remember, we always do out of 11 here at the product.
That's why correct.
I think that fits. I mean, I feel like this is one of those times where we have said a lot of negative things about the movie overall, but I think we're going to end up grading it higher than. Sometimes our grades aren't as concurrent. It's still a Conjuring movie. There's still a lot of positives to it.
Yeah, like, look, I was very hard on the movie, but it's still very enjoyable. Like, I was texting PLD the entire time I was watching it, and I was like, this is a lot more enjoyable than I remember. It's a fun watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not necessarily cohesive as the other two because it's not a James Wan movie.
Right.
But I think because it's not a James Wan movie, I'm still going to go 7.
I think that's actually very, very fair. Let's see. Okay. I think I am in the same frame of mind of you. I'm here, of course. I am cheating a little bit because I do have the scores in front of me because I have the graph open that we're going to talk about. If you give it a 7, I think I did like it better than you a little bit, which is why I hadn't actually decided on this rating before you spoke, but you're saying it confirms for me. I actually went with a 7.5.
I almost went with a 7.5. So you and I were actually much closer together than I think that we thought. I almost went with the 0.5, but there's something about it. And again, maybe it's the ending. Maybe it's the overall just kind of vibe. Like, I can't go higher than I can't go higher than the 7.
Right.
As weird as that sounds, just because there's something just off enough.
I get that. And I get that. I do understand.
Yeah, totally. I knew you do. I'm just saying, like, we're usually, again, within 0.5 of each other. Pretty impressive, actually.
The funniest thing is, I'm going to spoil something here. We both gave The Nun the same exact grade. I gave Nun a 7.5, and you gave The Nun a 7.
Oh, shit. I almost want to give The Nun a 7.5 just to get it out of the... You know what? Fuck it. Leave it.
Leave it? Okay. So there we go. We have it. That's a very interesting... Let me do a little math here, and we can...
This is the most interesting part where PLD does math where you guys can't see it. And
you can't see it
either.
You can't. It's just me.
Because I'm not with PLD right now. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, we're not. You're not in the same room, surprisingly enough. Other than that, why is there only 7 films? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's right. That's good. Oh, that's why I did that. Okay. Well, what it's coming down to is our visions of the franchise, and our visions of the franchise. My point range in this film of this series, my average score is 7.31.
Okay, that's not bad.
Your average is 7.5.
So I'm a 0.2 ahead of you.
Not even 0.19. And our average, our total average between us is 7.41. That's what it comes down to.
That's the most consistent that I could have anticipated, to be honest with you. That's actually pretty good for a movie like this, or a franchise like this, rather.
I totally agree. I'm going to sort these now also and give us our ratings from least to greatest on both of them. So we're going to start with PJ's rankings.
Hello, that's me. If you don't know, I'm PJ.
Let me go with this.
You're really good at doing this live. We should probably have had everything ranked.
I probably should have this ranked beforehand. That's true.
That way you could just move it. But
it would be nice.
Here's the thing, though. I have 2 that are 7.
You are. So you have to break the tie.
I have to break the tie. The tie goes to the nun.
Okay. All right. Let's see how that works.
I'm telling you right now, the tie goes to the nun.
Okay. All right. Let's see how this goes then. I will make this happen. And what we'll have, PJ, then, in your rankings, from least to best, we have the lowest, Annabelle, at 2.
Because it deserves to be number 1.
The Curse of La Llorona.
La Llorona.
La Llorona.
I can't believe for saying it that way.
Am I being bad? I just have a hard time. I do have a hard time saying that. La Llorona. At a 6. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, at 7. The Nun at 7. Annabelle Creation at 8. Annabelle Comes Home at 9.
Damn right.
And The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 are tied at 10.5.
What can I say?
So you have to break the tie.
All right. The tie goes to, in this instance, The Conjuring as the OG.
The OG.
Of it all. Like,
okay.
And that's one of the weird... Here's what I'll say. There's a franchise that PLD and I have talked about doing in the future where if this came down to it and there was a tie between the first entry and a later one, the original entry would not win.
Okay.
This is the one case where it actually does.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right, then let us see how PLD did. Me. I'm talking in the third person now because that's how I'm running.
I mean, look, I talk in the third person, you talk in the third person. It's like we're the same person.
Exactly.
Just about 20 years apart. No, I'm just kidding. It's like 10.
Also, Annabelle at number 2. With a ranking of 2. Then also The Curse of La Llorona at 5.5. For me, Annabelle Creation at 6. I have that tie. I know you said that. You said that. We already had this discussion. You had it at 8, and then I had it at 6, and I still hold by that. I still stand by that. Too much in that third act I didn't like. After that, I also have a tie between The Nun and The Conjuring. Devil Made Me Do It. And I don't know which one I want to rank higher. I think you went with The Nun.
I did.
I think I gotta go.
You're really gonna do this just because
to be contrarian.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're literally just doing that.
I don't know if it is though, because I think The Conjuring 3 has Wilson and Farmiga, which does give me a lot to hang my hat on. I mean, and then has Farmiga too, just a different one. But I think I will. No, I can't do it. I gotta go Nun. I gotta go The Nun. There's too much imagery that I do like in The Nun that I do. We are definitely staunch Nun fans, so I'll go with that. It's a tough one. I also have Annabelle Come Home after that, and then I also have a tie between The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2. I am going Conjuring 2.
Wow.
I'm going Conjuring 2.
Wow. Really? Even Dipper's mad.
Dipper's a little mad. I get it. I'll let it go. Dipper, you can mad all you want. At the end of the day, I love the OG Conjuring, but I love the swings that Conjuring 2 took. And I love the familiar aspect even more between Ed and Lorraine during Conjuring 2. I don't know.
It's the Elvis. Look, I know it's the Elvis. It's fine. I understand.
It might be the Elvis thing. It might be the Elvis thing.
The Elvis thing.
It might be. I loved it more and more. The more I saw it, I remember the first time I saw it, I actually definitely ranked The Conjuring 1 above it because Conjuring 2 got very overly complex at time. But when I watched it again, I was into the complexity and I thought there was a lot more meat to it. So that's right.
Well, there you go. Different wants you to know that he doesn't agree with you, but he respects your opinion.
Is that what that was? I thought he was actually going, I thought maybe I won him over. But
no, that was, see? He disagrees, but he respects him.
He's yelling at you. He's barking at you. You hear this. He's looking at you and barking. That's what he's saying. No, Dad, he's right.
No. He wishes that it could go that way, but it's incorrect.
All right,
damn, what a franchise ranking this ended up being, but we're not done just yet.
We are here to do one more thing. We are going to discuss the future. Conjuring. Yes.
What happened? The futuring?
The futuring.
That's all right. That's what it's going to be from now on. Let's talk about the futuring of all things.
The futuring of the Conjuring universe, which we have news on. I mean, news-ish, not new news, but new-ish.
New-ish, because what's funny is actually when we had talked about going through this, neither of us could have anticipated this was coming, but we kind of mentioned this a couple podcasts ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's news.
There is news.
There hasn't been any talk about a potential fourth Conjuring film since its release last year.
Well, I'm not entirely sure. There was some talk in January at one point. They mentioned it that both Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson have both said they would be very happy to come back for a fourth one.
Yeah, but on a studio level, we haven't heard anything. But that's also because WB is in a flux right now.
Right.
As they were bought by Discovery before we had started all this, and now that is all closing on the other end of us starting this, or finishing this closing this iteration of the podcast.
Correct.
So in that, what's interesting is that while we have not heard anything about a potential Conjuring 4 a lot, other than Juan has said that there's more stories and that the actors would come back.
Right.
The next entry officially that has been announced and now has a director is The Nun 2, a movie that's been in development for quite a while, a movie that we talked about a little bit during The Nun that was on the docket that we hadn't heard anything about in a while, and it is being directed by none other than The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It director, Michael Chavez. What an interesting choice.
It is an interesting choice. I will say, I remember hearing news, The Nun 2, I got excited, because you and I both love The Nun. We are definitely, is not, it's gotten mixed reviews. It's not exactly the thrilling to the franchise. We both liked it incredibly, though. So I was like, yes, The Nun, directed by Michael Chavez. Oh, okay.
News came out while I was driving home from Los Angeles, and I sent it to you while I was at a gas station.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a better way to visualize the news than I sent it to you while driving home, while stuck at a gas station grabbing food. Which is like kind of my feelings on this, because the truth is that like he clearly got better between La Llorona and this, but he's not a strong director. And The Conjuring, or The Nun rather, did not have the world's best script. It was made better by the direction between Corin Hardy and, as we both know, James Wan, who directed a couple of the sequences of the film as well. So it's a curious choice, to say the least. And The Nun being the next follow-up to The Conjuring 3 is not the direction I thought it would go.
I agree. I fully agree. Although it's interesting to note that back in 2017, Juan had discussed the possibility of that sequel and had said something to the effect of he knew potentially where, if it worked out, where The Nun 2 could lead and how it would tie back to Lorraine's story that were set up in the first two Conjurings at that point and make it all come full circle. That intrigues me because I don't know exactly where he's going with all of it.
They're 100% going to finally make Tessa Farmiga somehow related to her.
I think it's going to be the case too. I think it's got to be because they both see visions. They're both Farmigas. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense that they're.
And Tessa said that she was coming back. She said that she was still involved in the development in some capacity. So it just makes a lot of sense. But I have to ask you, we're now outside of this, right?
Right.
We're through the franchise. The Nun 2 is now the next franchise entry,
Right.
if you will.
Right.
So you can't choose the Nun 2. Where do you go with this? What do you want to see next? Like, what after the Nun 2, where do you want to see the franchise go? I'm very curious.
After the Nun 2. You're saying
because
the
Nun 2
is definitively
the Nun
making
2 is happening. Okay. Definitively, as of this podcast moment, at 10:16 p.m. PST on May 16th, not to date the podcast as we're recording it, the Nun 2 has been greenlit and is happening, as far as you and I are aware, by Michael Chavez in the director's chair. So you cannot choose the Nun 2. Where do you take the franchise after that? What do you want to see? I'm curious.
Now, what I really want to see, it's kind of interesting because everything I've always wanted to see would be another. Conjuring 4 would be my most important thing. But, so in that, I want to interrupt you. I apologize. Okay. The Conjuring 4 also is probably my crown jewel of this, right? Okay, right.
Like, I think you and I both agree. We know Juan's not coming back.
Well, that's what I want to tackle. Like, before you step in and on that,
Okay.
I will talk about something else. But my initial thought when I see it is like, Nun 2, great, I love it. I want the Conjuring. But I sat down and thought about it and think that I do want to see the Conjuring 4, but I almost want to wait it out for a little bit, because if we wait it out enough, give it a couple more years, throw a couple of other spin-off type things in there, maybe another Annabelle movie, I don't know, maybe something else, maybe a Nun movie or whatever. Or I think I'd like to get out of like any sequels. I'd like to get a new entry. Let's get a new spin-off, like a Crooked Man or a new spin-off or something like that.
Well, Crooked Man's been in development, so there's every chance that happens.
Right, and that's exactly exciting about that. And if we give it long enough, Juan could come back at that point, giving enough time away from the franchise. He returns in Crown Glory. You bring along the Ed and Lorraine. At that point, McKenna Grace is old enough to be Judy, and we get what we want out of The Conjuring 4. James Wan directing, Ed and Lorraine with McKenna Grace as Judy. I mean, and that's not any slight meant to the Judy Warren actress from the first 3 films. And you know what? It might not ever happen because James Wan might feel a little loyalty to her. And it's not like she's been bad. I just love McKenna Grace.
No, I agree with you.
So even if it's not McKenna Grace, but you're asking me what I want. I would love to see McKenna Grace join the Conjuring franchise, joining the main movies with Ed and Lorraine and a returning James Wan. That's my crown jewel.
Interesting. I like your choice. My crown jewel is also Conjuring 4, but I also know at this point, between you and I, obviously, is that there's no fucking chance that we get Juan back. It's just the truth of the matter. He's a little popular. That's not a dig. He's just a little popular. So, I'll say, I think McKenna's old enough now to come back. Because at this point, enough time has passed. I think she can pull off the Judy Warren role.
Mm-hmm.
My choice is a Conjuring 4 sequel. Directed by Lars Klevberg, who did the Child's Play remake, with McKenna Grace as the lead.
Okay. Oh, so Conjuring 4 without Ed and...
No, with them, but with McKenna Grace as the lead.
Okay. But still, so basically you're supplanting Ed and Lorraine as they're not no longer the lead of The Conjuring. It's
they'll be they'll be like the co-leads, but I want McKenna Grace to be
front
like
and center.
The front and center. And maybe that's a little bit of the Ghostbusters afterlife of it all, because I thought she was so great in Afterlife leading a film, because she's never really gotten to lead in that capacity in other than obviously Annabelle Comes Home.
Right. Agreed.
And I thought she was so great in Afterlife, and I think that enough time, obviously, because of COVID, because of delays, because of how things are, I think she's probably at the point you could pull off bringing her back.
Yeah, that could be a case.
I would love that.
I like that. I like that's a great choice as well. I will say I do think that Juan coming back is not as pipe dream as you might think it would be, because I kind of feel if you, again, that's why I said give it time. Give it enough time directors and artists like to revisit their old stuff. So there's enough time passed. He does a couple more Aquaman movies, does a few more Malignant. You guys kind of get to the point. Maybe he like says, you know what, it would be kind of cool to like, even if it's a finishing out the franchise, I'll come back and make the final one kind of thing. I could see it happening.
That would be dope. I won't lie. If they like decided that there's no more Conjuring franchise left to tell, and he's like, look, I've got one more. It's like my Unforgiven. I'd watch the shit out of that.
That being said, if we were going to make a Conjuring 4 and I had to do it without Juan, I'm going to say a name which I know you like. He's very busy, so I don't know how it ever happened. Mike Flanagan.
Ooh, Mike Flanagan. Another McKenna Grace director, obviously. Haunting the Hill House. He knows Haunted House.
He knows his Haunted House type story. That's what we're going to go back to and everything else. He knows horror very well.
I'm so desperate that he ends up with the Dark Tower series. That I hope that never has to happen.
Yeah, I get that. I'm talking just.
I love your choice, though.
Insular. I love Mike. I just want more Mike Flanagan.
So I'll say this: the reason I chose Lars is because I actually thought I was going to hate the Child's Play remake, and I actually thought it was so well directed. I didn't think the script was necessarily great, but I thought it was so well directed and so well put together overall as a package that. For a remake that never needed to happen, because I honestly I hope that one of you chooses Child's Play in the future, because Child's Play is such a like personal franchise for me, and it's a series that I love so much that I am so like precious to it that I thought for sure this dude was going to fuck it up, and I walked out of Child's Play going, you know what, man, he directed the shit out of that movie.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And if I don't get him doing Conjuring 4, give him The Ferryman.
I would like to see that. I will say, because I watched Child's Play. I did a recent watch through of that. Obviously, I think you remember I did that. Because and go to the TV show. That's right. But I watched it anyway because it was going to be completist of me. I actually thought, I think I liked the film less than you, but it wasn't because of Lars at all. I kind of thought, I think in my review, I remember the review I wrote, I said if it wasn't a Child's Play film, I would have loved it more. I think it was just more that conceptually, I didn't like how they changed the storyline of some of the things that it went and it kind of became more an AI gone wrong story in a way.
No, it totally was, and you're not wrong.
And it just sucked the joy out of it for me. It sucked the joy out of it for me. I was all into like the Child's Play aspect of it. So if it was something else, I probably would have enjoyed it more. So that tells me that Lars directing was definitely not the issue. That I liked that aspect.
There's some great kills in them.
Oh, there is. Absolutely. I do like that aspect.
Yeah. So that was why my choice was Lars, just because I think he has something to prove. I think Annabelle as a franchise, in my opinion, is pretty much toast. I don't know how you continue
I don't really know either.
Because it's behind the glass. We've done as much as we can. Like, you can't do it in the Warren's house again. We know the doll's never going to get out at this point. So, Annabelle is pretty much a moot point.
Yeah.
But Lars is doing a Ferryman movie, or Lars doing, like, honestly, he should be doing The Nun too. No shot at Chavez, but like...
Yeah, it's a shot at Chavez. It is, and it's okay. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I just think that there's a lot of directions that the franchise could go at this point, and I'm curious where it can, because there's some stories left, and we've touched on some stuff where you could potentially do spin-offs, but I also feel like, and maybe it's just me, we're kind of at the end of the rope. Like, it's kind of a pretty short franchise, if you will, because you're going to run out of steam eventually, and I don't know how many of the stories are really left that are interesting enough to tell.
Interestingly enough, I was looking at you inspired me a little bit. I just found an article that says 12 of the Warrens cases that could be used for a future movie.
Oh, wow. 12? When was that article published?
This article was published in November 3rd of 2020.
Wow. So, okay, 2 years ago. All right.
So there's, I don't know much about them, but there's like a church haunting, it looks like. It looks like there's a...
Honestly, I'd watch the shit out of a church haunting.
I mean, it's kind of similar to the Nun you would think of a convent haunting, but, I mean, not too bad.
Yeah, but, like, imagine that with the Warrens, though. Like, I could have some fun with that.
Talking about The Apprentice, which would be, I guess, Ed's nephew has a paranormal investigator in his own right. They get a different character. That could be a spin-off way that keeps it within the family, so to speak, without having to be a main Conjuring film. The West Point haunting, a military academy.
I'd watch that too.
That'd be kind of cool too. They never really.
So there's a couple left. Maybe there's more than I anticipated.
Yeah, there's something we can probably make it work. Hey, look at this. The South End Werewolf.
Well, the werewolf shows up obviously in
right. So we could actually make that work out. Maybe we do the full thing of that potentially.
All right.
Interesting.
Look, there's places for this franchise to go. I would like to see more. I love the Conjurings. I like the franchise overall. There's only one movie I wouldn't actively go back and revisit, as we made clear in our rankings and the way we talked about them. So, look, the franchise's future is... Oh, go ahead.
Let me ask one thing. I was looking at this thing. Speaking of The Nun, the end of The Nun, we saw Frenchie and how Frenchie, the whole thing with Frenchie, and that's a callback to the earlier.
Correct.
So we could actually see what is like. I don't know if The Nun 2 is going to get into Frenchie's part of it or not. I don't know.
Think it has to.
It almost has to, right? That's what I'm thinking. If it's not, that's another
actually
potential
now
spin-off.
Now you bring it up. There's your tie.
Yeah.
Vera could be in The Nun too. We could find out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to think about in this. There's a lot of bright future for the franchise, which I got to give credit for. There's a lot that they can still do, I guess, more than I anticipated. But I really had fun going back to this, man. Thank you for choosing this, because it was a lot of fun to talk about it. And, man, I just like these movies.
I do. I like these movies, too. I mean, I like a lot of movies, and I love horror movies. That definitely helps out, obviously. But that is going to end our Conjuring universe run. Now, unfortunately, we haven't been as consistent as we'd like to. We mentioned that tops. We have very busy with some things. We do have some things that we want to do, and what it comes down to, we also have a Patreon at patreon.com/PLD projects. We do have some great patrons. And you know what? I'm going to take the opportunity right now to shout out a few of them. Danielle Ramirez, Brandon Buckingham, Brandy Parker, Jeff Alterman, John Lustrina, and Kelly W. are all at that level. They're my producers and executive producer, Danielle. Those are the people at that levels. I really appreciate you. I couldn't do this without you. You guys really helped me. I love your support. I appreciate your support like you would not believe. And if you do want to join up, we actually have some cool stuff going on. We have the aforementioned two mediocre white idiots in a blue box that we're going to do. We're going to talk about.
Sure, you left blue in because I didn't want to yell at you.
It's not actually officially in the title. I think it's actually just.
Oh, I know it. It's not, but okay. I always add the blue because it's, to me, like, you could say any mediocre white dudes in a box, but like it's the blue box in particular.
Blue box. We have an episode of that going to be coming up. Hopefully, I'm going to announce that on the Patreon very shortly if I haven't already. And also, we get to do some hangouts and maybe some watch-alongs we might do. And you, of course, part of the process.
Can I like say something that was kind of? We did have a hangout. It was super fun.
It was great.
It was like 2 hours. We talked a lot. We had a good time. Yeah. There was hints of things to come. There was lots of questions. I had the fucking best time at that hangout.
It was a lot. I want to do that again. We're going to do it soon. We're going to do it soon. We're going to announce the next one.
Hang out with our patrons.
They're fun. They're fun people.
So if you think that you want to hang out with us, I mean, you can tweet at me too. I guess that's fine. But or you could hang out with us for like 2 hours on a video call.
It's fun.
It's fun.
We are fun people.
You could meet my corgis digitally, but you could meet them. They like to be around. They bark a lot. You heard them tonight, probably.
You definitely.
We're going to try to edit around some of it, but you still probably heard them.
You can't stop the corgi. That's how it runs.
Big Dipper for everything.
Oh, wow, he's definitely going to bite you
now. Oh, he walked over. He walked over.
Oh, boy.
Hi, Dip.
But also another perk you get is you get to suggest franchises for us to watch. We do get 2 suggestions already from Brandon Buckingham, one, and Danielle Ramirez, the second one. We're supposed to have time to do both of them, but unfortunately we're going to have to push one of them back for reasons. We will do next, I will say that, thanks to Brandon Buckingham, we'll do the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We're not going to do the Hobbits as well. Brandon just suggested he wanted us just to go through his favorite trilogy of all time, Lord of the Rings.
Something he continued to say during the hangout, by the way.
It's true, exactly. And while Danielle has suggested we could do either the Jurassic Saga or the Tremors Saga, I believe she also said, which is both are great. We will definitely do both of those at some point.
We're doing both for you, Danielle.
but we will unfortunately probably push it back because of our commitments and time frame. I can't guarantee the time frame because we do have a franchise that we started this whole podcast planning to do. This whole podcast was started because we were one of the reasons it was started is that we were both huge fans, and you might hate us and decide never to listen to us again. Some people really don't like this movie. We were big fans and staunch defenders of Halloween Kills.
So much so that we crashed another stream to tell the other stream
how wrong they were.
Unfortunately, how wrong they were. They were not anticipating that to happen.
They were not. Evil did not die tonight. Although no, Evil did die tonight because we came in and squashed their evil of not liking that film. But we wanted to cover the Halloween franchise, and the idea was to cover it and go right into Halloween Ends, and we would have that be a review. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that weekly commitment. So we want to start that earlier to make sure that if we have to take some time off here and there, we will be able to get to Halloween Ends when it comes out. So for Danielle, we will do a review of Jurassic World Dominion when that comes out. We will do a 1-episode review of that film.
Then we're going to go back and do your other.
And after Halloween is done, after we finish the Halloween franchise, the next franchise will be going back and doing Jurassic Park, the first 5 Jurassic Park films at that point for Danielle. If anybody else has from that level and above, I haven't heard anybody else make any suggestions yet. Feel free to, you know where I am. We have the big Facebook chat for all the patrons, so you know where I am. Just let me know what you want to see, and we will work on that as well. But that, I think, anything else we need to say, PJ? Are we good?
Look, I just want to tell you guys, thank you, number one, for hanging around. I know it's tough. Like, everyone podcasts, everyone does stuff, but you guys have been great. Thank you. There's been a lot of kind words. You guys are so much fun to talk to. You're so much fun to hang out with, and I really appreciate you guys, like, listening, but also you support us professionally, and that's fucking cool. So thank you. Like, cool. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. So from the bottom of my heart, from a mediocre white dude, thank you.
And from this mediocre white dude, thank you as well. And on that note, on that note, stay mediocre, people. Stay mediocre. And we will see you next time, my friend. Bye now.